July 5, 2026. MetLife Stadium, East Rutherford. 79th minute. Norway 1, Brazil 1. Knockout football. The most decorated national team in the history of the game against a nation that has never reached the quarterfinals of a World Cup. Andreas Schjelderup cuts in from the right. Haaland is in the penalty area, not where most people expect him, slightly behind the near post, angled to attack the far side of the 6-yard box. He reads the delivery before it leaves Schjelderup's foot. The cross comes in. Haaland attacks it. Powerful header near post. 2-1 Norway. Then, and this is the detail nobody talks about, he starts to pull his shirt over his head. He stops. He had realized a yellow card at that moment would suspend him for the quarterfinal against England. He stopped. He thought it through mid-celebration. The composure that defines him in front of goal apparently extends to moments of pure adrenaline too. Think about what that means. A man has just scored the goal that knocked Brazil out of the World Cup. The crowd is at fever pitch. His teammates are rushing toward him. Every nerve in his body is firing. And he stopped himself from taking his shirt off. Not because a coach told him to, because in the middle of the most intense emotional experience of his professional life, the part of Erling Haaland's brain that calculates consequences was still running. This video is not about the 7 goals. It is about what is happening in that brain before the goal, between the goals, and even in the seconds after the goal, that no one in football has fully stopped to describe. Erling Haaland has scored 7 goals from just 18 shots at the 2026 World Cup. That is a 39% conversion rate, the best of any player with 15 or more shots in a single World Cup since Gary Lineker in 1986, who scored 6 from 15 shots at a 40% rate. Let those numbers sit for a moment before we go any further. At this World Cup, Kylian Mbappé has taken 31 shots to score 7 goals, a 22.6% conversion rate. Lionel Messi, 29 shots, 7 goals. The 3 leading scorers in the tournament are level on 7 goals each. 2 of them are arguably the greatest players of their generation. The Thord is 25 years old, playing in his first World Cup for a country that hadn't qualified for the competition since 1998. And the 25-year-old has done it in 13 fewer shots than Mbappé and 11 fewer than Messi. Haaland is averaging a goal every 14 touches this tournament. That is the fewest of any player who, over the last 60 years, has scored 3 or more goals in a single edition of the World Cup. 1 goal every 14 touches. That is not luck. It is not pace or strength or aerial ability, though all 3 are extraordinary. It is something more precise and more unusual and more difficult to explain because the football world has spent 20 years building an analytical framework that measures what players do with the ball, and Haaland's genius is almost entirely in what he does without it. To understand what Haaland is actually doing at this World Cup, you need to understand the specific problem he solves, and why that problem is not the one most people think they're watching him solve. Most discussions of Haaland begin with his finishing, his conversion rate, his expected goals over performance. At Manchester City, his 172 goals came from an expected goals figure of 104.6, an overperformance of nearly 70 goals that no other striker comes close to. The natural conclusion: he is an unusually accurate finisher. This is correct, but it is the wrong explanation for why the conversion rate is so high. Haaland's conversion rate is high because he systematically selects for situations where the probability of scoring is already high before he shoots. He does not manufacture goals from nothing. He waits, with a discipline that most forwards cannot maintain, for the situation that gives him the best possible chance. And then he executes. His first 6 goals in this tournament were scored at an average distance of 7.5 meters from goal. The 7th, the long-range strike against Brazil, was hit from 20.4 meters. Before that goal, he had not attempted a single shot from outside the penalty box in the entire tournament. At 7.5 meters from goal, in central position with the body positioned correctly, the base probability of scoring from a single shot is approximately 30 to 35%, depending on the defensive situation. Most strikers average 10 to 15% overall conversion because they take shots from positions where the probability is much lower. Wide angles, long ranges, under pressure, off balance. Haaland almost never takes those shots. Not because he can't. He has proven he can with the 20.4-meter finish against Brazil. Because he has decided that they are not the best use of his one asset that cannot be manufactured by a system: perfect positioning at the right moment. The question the football world has struggled to answer is, how does he know when the right moment is? The tactical critique of Haaland that has persisted since his first season at Manchester City is consistent. He covers less ground than other forwards. He doesn't press from the front. He doesn't track back. His defensive contribution is, by most measurements, limited. At Pep Guardiola's City, where every outfield player is expected to contribute to the press, where the fullbacks push forward and the defensive shape requires genuine effort from everyone on the pitch, Haaland is the exception. His father, Alfie Haaland, played for Norway in 1994, the last time the country qualified before 2026, that the son has watched every version of his own game scrutinized in a way that the father's generation never experienced. And the question about pressing has always been framed as a limitation. It is not a limitation. It is the logic. In the Brazil match alone, Haaland registered 30 touches. 7 ball carries for 51 meters of total carrying distance. 12 of 13 passes completed for 92% accuracy. 4 shots, 2 goals, expected goals of 0.39, which means he scored 2 goals from chances a model assessed as collectively worth less than half a goal. 30 touches. In a high-stakes World Cup knockout match against one of the most possession-dominant squads in the tournament. 30 touches. This is not a passive display from a player going through the motions. It is the exact volume of engagement that Haaland has determined produces maximum output. He is not conserving energy out of laziness. He is allocating it with a precision that most forward play analysis doesn't have the vocabulary to describe. The 5 meters, he doesn't run across the midfield. He saves for the 5 meters inside the penalty area that determine whether the chance becomes a goal. The 20.4-meter finish in the 90th minute against Brazil requires a specific explanation because it appears to contradict the entire argument of this video. Haaland's pattern is 7.5 meters. Haaland's pattern is inside the box, high-probability positions, minimum distance. And then, in the final minute of a knockout match against the most successful nation in World Cup history, he hit a shot from 20.4 meters and scored. Was this a break in pattern? An emotional decision? A moment where the calculated striker became, briefly, something else? The ESPN analysis of the goal noted, "This is unusual because before this, his first World Cup goal from outside the penalty box, the average distance on his first 6 goals in the tournament had been inside the box at short range." But the details of the goal itself explain it. The Brazilian goalkeeper, aware of the threat posed by a Haaland run in behind, had positioned himself slightly higher than standard, anticipating an attempt to beat the offside line. The angle of the shot meant the goalkeeper would have had to change direction twice to make the save. The window, in other words, was open in a specific way that it is almost never open from that distance. Haaland saw the window. He took the shot. He scored. This was not a break from his logic. It was the application of his logic to a different distance. The question is never where he shoots. It is when, and when is determined by a single calculation. Is the probability of scoring from this position, right now, higher than the probability of waiting for a better position? Against Brazil, in the 90th minute, with that goalkeeper positioning, the answer was yes. He shot. He scored. Former Norway striker Jan Age Fjortoft, who played with Haaland's father at the 1994 World Cup, has described what City's system does for the son. The physical attributes are all there to see, but the leadership has always been brilliant. But the tactical relationship between Guardiola and Haaland is more specific than leadership. It is a mutual recognition of a principle that took Guardiola years to articulate clearly. A striker who occupies the correct position at the correct moment is worth more than a striker who creates the chance himself from the wrong position. Guardiola's system at City is built on positional play, on occupying specific zones of the pitch in specific phases of the game, creating numerical overloads and forcing the opponent to make defensive choices that open spaces elsewhere. The final destination of that system, when it works correctly, is a player in a high-probability scoring position with the ball arriving at his feet. At Barcelona, with Messi, that player was a false 9 who created the space himself. At City with Haaland, Guardiola identified something different, a player who does not need to create the space because the system creates it for him, and who, when it arrives, converts at a rate that no system in football history has ever produced. 172 City goals from an XG of 104.6, an overperformance of nearly 70 goals. Guardiola did not ask Haaland to press more. He did not ask him to create more. He asked him to be the last piece, the receiver, of a machine specifically calibrated to deliver the ball to the exact space Haaland inhabits best. The genius is not the system. The genius is that Haaland understood exactly what the system needed him to be. And then he became it completely. 7 goals in his debut World Cup. More than Messi, 1 goal, Mbappé 4 goals, and Ronaldo 1 goal, had combined in their debut tournaments. Tied with Jagor Lotto's 1974 record for most goals in a debut World Cup tournament. Norway, in their first World Cup since 1998, have reached the quarterfinals for the first time in the country's history. These are the records. They are accurate. They will be cited as the summary of Haaland's 2026 World Cup regardless of what happens against England on July 11th. But the records hide the thing that makes the records possible. His expected goals for the entire tournament, across all 7 goals, 0.39 from the Brazil match alone, suggests 2 of the 7 goals were scored from positions worth a combined 0.39 expected goals. The tournament total will be significantly below 7. He scored 7 goals from situations that a probability model collectively assessed as worth significantly fewer than 7 goals. Not because he got lucky, because he selects situations where his specific qualities, explosive movement into the box, aerial dominance, 2-footed finishing with perfect body shape, allow him to outperform the probability model consistently and deliberately. He has won 14 of 18 aerial duels in the tournament, the highest aerial duel success rate of any striker contesting more than 15 duels since tracking data began in 1966. That number is the one that carries the tactical argument. Aerial duel success rate is determined almost entirely by positioning, by arriving at the right spot at the right moment with the momentum oriented correctly. You cannot win 78% of aerial duels through strength alone. You win them by being where the ball is going before the ball gets there. That is the whole answer. Everything else is consequence. July 5th, 2026. 90th minute. Norway 2, Brazil 1. Haaland hits the 20.4-meter finish. It goes in. Then he starts to pull his shirt off. Then he stops. He stops because he has calculated, in the middle of the most intense moment of his professional career, that a yellow card would cost him the England quarterfinal. He has 7 goals at a World Cup. He is 25 years old. Norway have never been this far. And his brain is still doing arithmetic. That is not the portrait of a player defined by his goals. That is the portrait of a player defined by everything that surrounds the goals, the calculation, the positioning, the patience, the composure that exists not just before the shot, but in the seconds after it when most of the rest of us will have lost control completely. It's a lot of pressure on me, but I like the pressure, Haaland told GQ earlier this year. I would put a lot of pressure on Erling Haaland if I wasn't Erling Haaland myself. He likes the pressure because pressure is a version of calculation. And calculation is the language he speaks naturally, in the box, in training, in the 90th minute of a World Cup knockout match with his shirt half over his head. He put it back down. He looked for Skjelderup. He was already thinking about England. Go back to the MetLife Stadium. The header, the 20.4-meter finish, the shirt half raised. The football world, watching Erling Haaland at the 2026 World Cup, has been watching a player it already knows. The goals are recognizable. The strength is recognizable. The conversion rate is familiar from 4 seasons at Manchester City. What the football world has not yet fully articulated is the question this video has been building toward. Haaland is not the most complete forward in the game. He is the most efficient one, and efficiency and completeness are not the same thing. The football world spends most of its time celebrating completeness, the player who presses, creates, scores, assists, leads, controls. The forward who does everything. Haaland does not do everything. He does one thing, find the highest probability position in the penalty area and execute when the ball arrives, at a level that the history of football statistics has never recorded before. 39% conversion rate. 1 goal every 14 touches. 7 goals from situations that should, collectively, have produced significantly fewer. The question this raises, the one that applies as much to life as to football, is this. Is it better to do everything adequately, or to identify the one thing that produces the most value and do it at a level no one else can match? Guardiola had an answer. He built a system around it. Haaland had an answer. He became the system's final piece. On Sunday, July 11th, in Miami, England will try to find a different answer. 7 Premier League seasons of facing Haaland in training, in matches, in tactics meetings, and still, no one has solved the problem of a player who simply does not appear in the place you've been told to mark and then arrives at the place you weren't covering, at exactly the moment the ball does. The question is not where he shoots. The question is always when. Here is the question I want to leave you with. Football rewards completeness, the player who does everything. Haaland does one thing, better than anyone in the history of the sport has done it. Is that genius? Or is it a limitation that happens to be perfectly matched to the system that surrounds him? Tell me what you think in the comments. And come back after England on Sunday, because if Norway go through, that question is going to get a lot more interesting.